So this is Quirky Connections Take 2. What we're doing these Quirky Connections again are making connections with the basic learning that we've done this week and some things that we see around us all the time. And it's sort of fun to do that, and we want to be a little bit playful in terms of what connections that we're making. We started this week off by looking at two things. We looked at the idea of a partition, something that we collect things. And sometimes when things are really important, we want to make sure we collect as much as we can. And the second idea we had was the idea of a recycling process, of trying to get more than we thought. Here's an interesting puzzle. Have you ever stopped to really look at the shape of a tree? A tree is a fascinating object. It, of course, has typically a main trunk. It has branches, but of course, at the end of each of the branches and each of the small parts of the tree, you have leaves, and you have a lot of leaves. The tree behind me is an example. This is in fall time in Ontario, so some of the leaves have started to fall, but a tree produces an unbelievable excess of leaf area. And the interesting question is, why does it do that? What's the tree after? And we might simplistically look at that tree and say, the key thing here is really to get as much leaf area as possible to collect solar energy. So the idea of the partition, of getting as much of that solar energy as we can. But if you look at any tree under almost any circumstance, you'll recognize that the tree is way in excess of what's required to get solar energy. In fact, if we look at the tree behind me, it's very clear that some of them, of the leaves, are in bright light and some of them are in shadow. A lot of them are shaded by other trees. In fact, many trees have what's called the leaf area index, which is the ratio of the leaf area compared to the projected area of the tree that's well in excess of 3 or 4 or even 5. That is, there's 5 times as much leaf area as you need to possibly collect the solar energy that you need. The question is why? And the answer is quite interesting and quite obvious. The tree is designed as a collector, but it's not actually collecting solar energy so much as it's collecting carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is an extraordinarily dilute and rare molecule. Only about 3 out of every 10,000 molecules. Well, we're shifting up with climate change to perhaps 4 out of every 10,000 molecules are in fact carbon dioxide. And amazingly, the tree's major source of its mass, its major source of its matter comes from this carbon dioxide, which it fixes through photosynthesis. To get the carbon dioxide, it has to get it from the atmosphere. And that requires a large collection surface. The real trick is to get carbon dioxide inside the leaves. And the leaves, for that reason, are porous. They have small entry points where the carbon dioxide can simply, by a random process, diffuse in the leaves. And that's why the leaf area is so large, is it's got to collect the most rare and the most limiting of its inputs, which is, in fact, carbon dioxide. One other connection that we could just quickly make at the end of this week as well is whether you've ever considered the way we deal with that 24 hours in the day that we mentioned at the beginning of the week. We certainly have a partition phenomenon where we break our days up into pieces. But I think the secret sometimes of really effective time management comes from something that's not quite recycling, but at least it's double or even triple counting. If we really like what we do, then our social time can overlap with our work time. The people that we work with can become our friends, and those times and those hours that are spent on the job are not just counting for the job that we have to do, but they count for the enjoyment that we can get. We can build in our exercise into our commute time. We can reuse it. I think the real secret sometimes of time management is not so much that you partition well, but that you learn to do some strategic double counting. Now, of course, too much of that can drive you crazy, and I very much recommend you turn off your texting when you're with your best friends.